Hello, this is Virtualis the Chess Noob, learning and having fun with chess. The bishops, especially when I'm able to hold on to the bishop pair, are one of my favourite pieces in chess. The skewer, especially against a king with check, is one of the most powerful tactics in chess to win material. This often becomes available as the board starts to clear up in the middle and end games. In this game I played today, I managed to use this tactic twice to win the game. Please enjoy! Let's have a quick look at the review. So chess.com's algorithm. So now we started out fairly balanced and then a little bit chaotic towards the end. And this definitely wasn't a high accuracy game. So for myself, around 68%, opponent fairly close. And we both sort of made some inaccuracies, some mistakes and blunders, some good moves as well. And part of this is because I think the opponent started with a fairly unusual opening. Let's have a look at the analysis. All right, so opponent played with the white pieces and they led with e4, I played e5, and they surprised me with the second move with f3. So apparently this is the king's head opening. I'm not actually sure I've ever faced this before. Certainly my sense is that this isn't necessarily good, and Stockfish already says minus 0.07. So I wasn't too sure what to do, so I just developed knight f6. I played a3, and I thought that there was an opportunity for me to strike into the center, so d5. They played d3, and at this point I actually wasn't sure what I should do next. I had a sense I could probably keep the pawn on d5. Now I ended up playing d4, which was an inaccuracy, and I actually lose some of my advantage, in fact, with that push. And as we sort of move on, this starts to become a fairly closed position. So knight c6, g3, I play bishop e7, they play bishop g2, fianchetto. I short castles, and at this point we're basically back to equality. So even though that opening, if I played accurately, would have substantially favored black, I just didn't know how to exploit it. Opponent now develops their other knight to d2. I push b5, so given that this area looks fairly close, I thought I'll do a queenside expansion and push. They play f4, and I was fairly sure that me taking would be bad, as I'll lose control of the center. On the other hand, them taking would probably be good for me. So I played a5, again, trying to win space on the queen side. Now they captured using their pawn, and as I suspected, it was bad, and I captured back with knight. They now play b3, and here I thought that maybe I could do sort of a clever sort of maneuver. However, the opponent saw through me basically, and they played knight f3, which seems to potentially block that move, given that it is covered by the bishop. However, I do have now this pawn on d4, and as I couldn't really think of what to do otherwise, I made that move anyway. Stockfish recommended that I should have continued with my overall strategy of the queenside pawn push. Here they captured, I captured back, and now I have a pawn on e3. So basically now on the third rank or the sixth rank. So this pawn is a bit soft, effectively. However, if I can protect it, it does become a thorn on the opponent's side. So this is as if I've infiltrated one of my foot soldiers all the way into the courtyard of the enemy camp, and also in such a way that it's not so easy for them to capture. They play queen c1, so obviously potentially threatening the pawn and also developing the queen as well. Here I played rook g4 to protect the pawn. However, after I made this move, I thought that this possibly wasn't the best move because, yep, h3, reasonably easy to kick out. However, I did now have knight f2 and some opportunities here. So they play rook f1. Now, this pawn obviously is going to get taken next turn. I ended up taking that pawn. However, I could have captured the pawn on h3, given that it is guarded by the bishop, and that was probably my best move. However, just in the same way that opponents might not see your long diagonals, sometimes you miss them yourself as well. So I captured the pawn on d3 with knight, which is a blunder. Basically losing a full piece. I thought potentially this was still okay. I could capture back with queen, and now I've activated my queen in a fairly sort of threatening region. Now this pawn potentially is threatened as well, as is this pawn. However, the opponent decides to play b1. And here I thought for some time what was the best move. I considered sort of retreating the queen. However, I couldn't see anything particularly wrong with just capturing the queen, taking the queens out of the picture. The opponent would be forced to move their other rook, so they would give up their castling rights. I thought that was possibly still the best move for me. Even though I'm a little bit down on material, I may not want to lose my queen, I thought that might be still the best move, and happily Stockfish agrees. And that move actually brought me back to equality. Next, that pawn is now available. It's hanging, so bishop captures back, and now we're basically materially equal. However, that's in the sense that I have more pawns. So I have traded one piece for 3 pawns. Probably not good for me in the longer term. I would need to try to see whether I can equalize the pieces. Opponent plays knight d4, so do that knight. That was a good move. Here, I again wasn't too sure of the best way to move forward. I decided to give a check. That probably didn't achieve a whole lot. That pawn now is quite possibly lost, I suppose. I decided to give a threat to the knight. Knight captures the pawn here, and here I actually miss another bishop tactic. So here there was a pin. A pin, and that knight wouldn't be able to go anywhere. And more than that, if the king is forced to move, probably captures, that chains to another attack on the rook. So that was potentially a very, very good move. As you can see, if I chose the right move there, so bishop a6, it would be minus 3.5, sort of in my favor. So that was definitely the best move. I did not see that move in the game. Instead, what I opted to do was bishop e6, and this is ostensibly a bad move because I didn't see this potential fork that they could do with the knight. So here I sort of make one mistake. So they made a mistake, but I blundered right back, which is quite often in a game, in the middle game. Luckily, I didn't get punished for it. The opponent did capture the pawn, which was as expected. So, there's a certain greediness to that. That was their plan. So didn't see this next move. I did see this after I made the move. So I thought, whoop, better move that rook. So move the rook to open d file. Now they make another blunder. So they pushed forward their other knight. So I think my opponent possibly has some sort of knight moves may not be the most accurate for them. I can see where they're potentially headed there. Now trying to team up an attack on the f7 pawn. However, I now have my first skewer. Given the d file is now protected by my rook, I now have a skewer. And this is a skewer with check. The opponent is forced to move their king. King cannot capture the bishop, and thus that knight now falls. And now I am now materially ahead, and we have now balanced pieces. I still have the bishop I still have the bishop pair. I still have the 2 rooks, while the opponent has the 2 rooks, a bishop, and a knight. Now, in this position, I should have the advantage. Opponent plays another knight move, with an attack on the bishop. Yep, potentially a good move. But what I did see was there looked like there might be another skewer there. And so I made this move knowing that it probably wasn't the best move. I did see the move with rook to d2, which is again protected by the bishop. And that would be another skewer, a rook skewer. However, sort of in my calculation, I couldn't see how I could capture that bishop right away, given that the king could move to a square that would still protect that bishop. And now, if you go through Stockfish, that was the best move because eventually, after some shuffling, you end up capturing, I think, the pawn. However, I didn't see that. I thought that might have been a good move, but I did see this other skewer along the diagonal, and I like my bishops. I also didn't wanted to move my bishop out of that threat. So I moved bishop to d7. No mistake, but I'm still doing reasonably well. It's a mistake simply because there was a better move. Opponent moves their knight, makes another knight move, missing the second bishop skewer, the king now against the rook. So that rook is now lost. At this point, the opponent opted to resign. Obviously, I think after losing the rook for a bishop, I should be able to win probably fairly easily in terms of sort of the material balance. Not to mention, I'm also up 1 pawn. So thank you to the opponent for a good game. GG. If you can, holding on to your bishop pair can give you an advantage in an otherwise materially balanced game. I really enjoy using the bishops for pins and skewers, and these diagonal tactics are often a little more difficult for the opponent to see coming. As an interesting historical note, the modern bishop was originally the elephant in India and as it passed to Europe through Persia. The modern version of Chinese chess still has the bishop piece as the elephant. Why the elephant? Imagine elephant archers like those in the massive battle scene from Lord of the Rings. The archers can't shoot straight ahead as the elephant's head is in the way, but rather they aim at enemy troops diagonally. I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.